Hello, everyone. I'm actually going to start by telling you two anecdotes. If you ask my parents to tell you a story about me, they'll start telling you how, when I was 4 years old, they found me in a room with all my dolls, pathetic communist dolls, by the way, telling them, arranging them in a formation and telling them to all go to the bathroom. And that's their version of how they knew I was going to become a boss. Now, that's the first anecdote. The second anecdote is about my complete and utter failure to become a boss. And it had to do with, I went to theater school, and then one of the master teachers at NYU, master teachers was Oliver Smith, the biggest Broadway designer of all time, actually. And I remember I was struggling with a set, and I was just saying, but you know, the people in the balcony will not be able to see the scene because I don't know how to do the masking for the balcony. And he just looked at me and said, my dear, none of my friends sit in the balcony. And that is when I realized all my friends sat on the balcony, and I could never be that egalitarian and just design for the people on the orchestra seats. So over the years, this idea, this philosophical idea of how to lead a department, or what does it make to have a great art department, has been a journey in a way, because we're all artists and we don't come naturally to being bosses, and yet we do have to. And we don't work in isolation. It is a very collaborative forum. So I thought I'd find the best minds and to ask them, first to tell you how they became a designer, their journey to becoming a boss. And then we'll talk about the philosophy of a great art department. So Jeannine, would you like to start?
How I became a boss? My mother always complained when I was a kid, you don't need to marshal everybody as a troop member in this household. So I'm afraid it was a disease from youth. I seem to just always have thought that other people needed marshaling, whether they did or not, I was going to do it. So I'm afraid that's how I became a boss. It was partially by nature. But I enjoy it. I have to say, I especially enjoy the opportunity to tell men who are carpenters and painters what they should do. I get a deep, delicious feeling from that. Because when I was first trying to get into the Art Directors Guild, I was told, girls are not wanted. And I was stupid and hard-headed then, as I am now. And I didn't know better, so I just did it. So I guess that's a little bit more about the personality than you need to know.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I'm bossy too, but I guess I'll talk about how I became a designer, and how I became a boss I feel like came after. I mean, I've always been bossy. I became a designer. I was studying art history and studio arts in school, and I was doing a lot of installation work, and I just kind of always felt like something was missing. And then I went to go visit a friend over spring break my senior year to party in New Orleans, and they were making a short film. And instead of partying, I got up at 4 a.m. every day and helped on the short film. And I was like, oh, that's it. I missed the collaboration, and I didn't know that that's what I was missing, and I wanted to be working with people, and so that all kind of started clicking into place. And then I became a boss, I think, by working with my team, working with other people, and kind of figuring out that managing was going to be a huge part of designing also. So, not as funny, but...
Well, I don't know. We were more collaborative from the get-go. I think from our history of why and how we became involved with film, and less bossy. But do you want to do your beginning first? Since
What you're asking is how we became interested in film, or how we started?
How you became a production designer.
From childhood, I always loved movies, and in contrast with Sandy, who is formally trained, I'm informally trained. I grew up with artist parents that almost homeschooled me and my two brothers. So we don't have any training in film school or architecture, but we have an interest in art, and that sent me in an artist direction. I moved to Los Angeles in 1980, and the climate then was easier to break into film. It was less competitive, and contrary to how a lot of the climbing the rungs on the ladder everybody goes through, I started going after art direction or production design jobs on little tiny films, and ended up getting them. So I'm informally trained, and I just, out of the pan into the fire, jumped into it, and ended up meeting and talking to directors, and they hired me, and they put their trust in me, and the trust allowed me to pull it off. But with my collaboration with Sandy's help, we've been able to parlay that up to...
yeah, and I think untrained maybe means no film school, but I think all the training and all the things you study or are interested in throughout life come together to inform this, or come together when you first start getting involved with film. And I wasn't really trained, I just had a good sort of fine arts background, graduated, kind of thought I'd graduate in history, but went into art history, but then continually were involved with painting and ceramics and photography and architectural drawing. So it's an awful term, dilettantish, but it was really lucky that when David became focused in film, I was able to join him in that, because film is, you can use all the skills that you have and all your interests, and no one in this room is probably not creative. Everyone here has a good sense of all different ways of creativity, and they come from different sources, but it's in all of us, and it's a lucky thing. If you find it in film, it's a wonderful way to use it.
So let's discuss the philosophy about what we think is a great art department. When we say, oh my God, I had the best art department on this particular project. Jeannine, do you want to start?
I guess anybody who knows me knows that I'm a bit of a contrarian and an anti-authority person, and I've done a good job repressing a lot of that most of the time, but not all of the time. And there was a period a number of years ago when there seemed to be a lot of conversation about how corporations would build teams, and people would go off and do long hunts in the woods or whatever they would do, and I always thought, well, that's kind of a crazy idea. So I didn't pay much attention to it, but imagine my surprise when I went to do a small piece of a film in West Virginia, and I was there with a few teamsters and a couple of set dressers and a set decorator. And the film commissioner said, oh, you know what we should do this weekend? You can go river rafting down the New River. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. It's something I've never done. What I didn't know was this was a Class 5 river rafting expedition. That is as hard as you can get, and I'd never done even number 1 or 0. So I'm looking around, and there's me and the film commissioner and the set decorator and 2 Teamster boys and 1 set dresser, and I thought, oh boy. And then we watched the boats ahead of us go down the river, and it was very fast. very deep, a lot of rocks, and we were trying to navigate as carefully as we could, and we were all determined not to fall out of that boat because we saw the people ahead of us flipping all over the place. And I thought, I am not falling out of this damn boat. And I looked at everybody around and I said, none of us is going to fall out of this boat. I don't care what we have to do to stay in it. None of us did fall out of the boat. We were the only team that arrived at the sandy bar at the end a couple of hours later. And my set decorator looked at me smugly and she said, you see, now you must understand about this corporate team building stuff, right? So I guess what I'm saying is if I'm thinking about putting an art department together, that metaphorical image of everybody getting in this raft together and staying in the boat no matter what, and avoiding the rocks and going fast as hell and being determined to take care of each other and see after each other's welfare in case, God forbid, somebody get tossed out of the boat and arrive at the end. That's the metaphor that always comes to my mind, and I'm looking at the people who I would like to work with, and I'm thinking, can we all make it down this horrible river? Class 5 movie-making rapids in one piece and help each other do it? Of course, what I didn't say was at the end of this, I couldn't walk for 3 days. My muscles were so rigidly determined to succeed. So that's how my mind works. And I'm hoping I can learn something from how other people's minds work.
Well said, Jeannine. I guess, our comments are based on the films that we've experienced are modest to maybe middle-range films, so I don't have the experience of doing the bigger movies, but I think it all kind of applies where you really want to get people that are not just taking on the job to get a paycheck. I try to have people that I hire invested in the story. I like to have people read a script before I interview anybody, even from production assistant to supervising art director. So everybody has to be enthusiastic about the project. And I try to hire overqualified people in every position. And I struggle with that. I think one of the hardest things to do in making a movie from an art department standpoint is getting a crew together, because that's how we pull it off. But just to have that enthusiasm there and to have everybody on the same page and
well, it's like a puzzle, and you know your strengths, and unfortunately for some production designers, our case, is David's case, is that you can be 6 months between projects because you're looking for the right thing. You want to find the good script, you want to find the good team you're going to spend the next 6 months to a year with, so sometimes it takes a long time. So you can't carry people you've trained, or you can't carry people you have relationships with that are very good and will fill the holes that you have in your abilities. And if someone, so that's the thing. We're lucky because there's 2 positions filled right away. And when
well, let me explain it. We're a team together, a set decorator and production designer, so that's who we are. And Sandy made a good point about some designers that work continuously. They'll balance out in between a feature and go to commercials and then go to the next feature, so they can carry a core team of a family. where we don't do commercials, we just do a feature, so there can be sometimes a year gap in between where we're aggressively trying to get the next movie or waiting for the next movie, and we can't ask people to wait for that period of time. So we are having to meet new people and try to get new people to work with us. But we'll still reach out to the family of friends and people that have worked with us first, and if they're not available, it's meeting new people.
I think so much of our job is about communication, and so I try to stress finding people that I think communicate well and I know can communicate with each other well. You know, as the designer, you're not always there, so you have to put faith in your team that they're not only communicating well with each other, but also are communicating with the other departments as they need to be. And as far as not getting to carry a team all the time, that definitely happens. And I try to at least find one person that I trust a lot, whether it be the set decorator or the art director, and then they'll often have people they like to work with too. So I'm always open to suggestions, and if I trust someone, I trust that I'll like the person they like as well. And so you can kind of start building a team that way. And of course, we all ask each other for recommendations, or we hear other people's names. You know, I work mainly in New York, and so of course, big city, but it feels like a small world. So you always hear people's names floating around. And sometimes it's exciting to get to work with some people you haven't worked with before also, when you admire their work, so.
Where do you start, or who do you... It's such an interesting thing because we actually collaborate with a lot of people. It's not just a set decorator or the art director or even the immediate people in the art department, but there are location managers that work with us. There are prop masters, there are other professions. What are some of the most significant collaborations that you've had?
I think the first person is usually the location manager or the location scout. And you can tell right away if this is a person who is enthusiastic and hardworking and able to get with and has a similar vision to your own. We've all had experiences where location managers that are assigned to the job are somewhat less than overly enthusiastic, and then we've had experiences with ones who really care about story and how to tell it. And my best experiences, I guess, with the location department has always been get in the car and look at things. Don't sit and look at pictures. The only thing the pictures on the computer are going to tell you is whether or not it's worth the gas mileage to go to look at these places. For me, it's the physical reality of the place, the poetry that I feel with the location department, standing in a place. Can I imagine the scenario taking place here or not? So for me, the primary relationship, I guess I have to say, is with the location department. And the secondary one, and it becomes primary later, is with both the art director and the set decorator, because these are my brothers and sisters. I have to love them. I have to know how to fight with them. I have to know how to flirt with them. We have to know how to do what we need to do with each other to take care of getting the raft down the river.
I'll have to agree with Jeannine, and actually we share location managers. I've worked with a few location managers that Jeannine has used, and specifically, I outside of the umbrella of hiring people in the art department, the location department is really not in the jurisdiction of somebody that I would hire, but usually when I get involved in a project, they'll solicit my opinion and say, well, who should we hire for locations, or a couple of different positions, and I'll be able to push a certain person. And again, I'll go back to one person that has done the last bunch of shows with us, is actually a writer, and he's actually had a screenplay turned into an actual movie that it was made and projected and went through theaters. So he is not just somebody that's looking for places to shoot. He's actually invested in the story, so he really can read a script and contribute with ideas that really help tell the story. And I regardless of how they want us to do a movie, whether it's either in a sound stage with sets, I'll always lobby to try to shoot practical locations first, and then back out of that and build only what's necessary if a location needs to be finessed, or a set has to be built to replicate a location, or then an original set has to be built. So locations is really, really important. But I'll piggyback on that and say that the set decorator is really a very, very, very important position, right up there with supervising art director. And I think that the contributions that a really good set decorator provides can help, for sure, these small budget movies, but the bigger movies as well. And I've seen pretty big movies where I thought, you know, that could have benefited by having a better set decorator. So that's a very important position. And then the supervising art director also.
Yeah, the collaboration, there's some that aren't immediate, close people. I think for a decorator, the close people would be probably the costume designer and the prop master, mistress, prop person now. But first of all, it's always the director and the script. And that is a step away collaboration, but it's such an intimate, and it's intimate and important to read it, to break it down, to understand it. And along with the script, it's speaking, getting those short moments, sometimes only short moments, with the director, and really listening to them. So it's listening is an art, and you're going to understand why the director wants to do this project. There's always something in them that's a tell that you're going to learn, that's personal, and that you can embellish in the creative part of your design.
I think when I first started, I would always fall in love with the DP.
Yeah.
And then I started falling in love with the locations people. My girlfriend works in locations, so nobody loves locations more than I do. But also, I mean, I think maybe a relationship that is often very complicated, but something that is consistent throughout the whole project, is with the line producer. Because dealing with the money, you know, as much as we can kind of remove ourselves a little bit and lean on our team to deal with that more, ultimately a lot of those things are affected by decisions and designs we're making. And so it always ends up coming back to us. And hopefully, you know, you end up working with line producers over again that you like, that you get along with, that you have an understanding with. But that relationship is important, but can often be fraught.
So I want to go back to that raft that Jeannine is in. And here we are. We're all like bouncing in the raft. I just have this image of all of us bouncing. And you, even though you haven't had any experience with rafting, you now have to tell everyone how to stay calm in the raft. So what are your techniques or thoughts or philosophy about making your department flow? The raft.
I'm not sure I have a coherent philosophy about this. I think it is more a practical philosophy. I think every team is different, and you have to suss out what's their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and never be afraid to hire people who know more than you do about a subject or are better at something than you are. Because if somebody is better at paddling than you are, then you need that person. It's not just because you're in the back yelling the directions. You need people who can do things that you don't necessarily think you're good at or that you don't necessarily want to do. I don't necessarily want to think about budgets and numbers. I want to make the lists of what I think it is we should do. And then I want to consult with construction and the paint department to find out if this seems more or less in line with what we have to spend to get the job done. So I think it really is an organic process. It's different from project to project because the people involved are always different from project to project. Even if you can drag a few people along with you that you've gone down the river with once or twice before, you still have newcomers, and you need to figure out how to get them all in the boat safely and find out what they're good at. And people want to be used for what they're good at. Everybody wants a master or a boss who knows how to exploit your best attributes. None of us in this room can do a good job at anything unless you're asked to do it. And I keep reminding myself of that. If nobody asks you or expects you to do a great job, you're not going to be able to do it. And that's not just about money, it's about the quality of the story and the degree of expectation that you're hoping to be received with. So I keep telling myself, I can't do a good job unless I'm asked to do it. Unless somebody offers you something that's going to challenge you, in a way, there's no point in doing it if you're not desperate for the money. So I don't know, I meandered, but.
I actually like to acknowledge where the ideas come from, and actually the last panel hit on where you're soliciting ideas from everyone, and I like to take that same approach where how the physical setup of an art department I like to work within is an open bullpen area where everybody, and this again is a smaller art department, not in a huge environment, but I like to have everybody listening and working around a central table where the drawings or models can be put, and when a director comes in, to actually have everybody stop and surround the table with the director and listen to what the director is saying. So, and if we're presenting an idea to the director, I like to actually say, well, that idea came from this person right here. And not to say that it's my idea, but to actually really point out who, and to make the director understand that it's not just coming from me or from Sandy, it's coming from even a production assistant, if they may have the best idea. So, but to acknowledge that, and to, I think that helps move everybody forward in a positive momentum. If I could say that.
Yeah, I know the creative team, that was a lot of good information. I think to get things going in my department, it's really important for the crew to be really well informed. So everything that I've learned in maybe the 2 weeks I've started before them, that has to be conveyed to them. Each time a new person comes in, we spend maybe 48 hours with them telling them everything I know. So it's all the visual information we have accumulated, locations, the lookbook things, but also any bits of information the director has imparted, or the DP, or color discussions, all that is up. And recently, you'll know that art departments are set up with a lot of that on the walls. So it's shared between the graphics department and from the production department, the designers down through everybody. The swing gang can look at it. And it's really important that they're all informed, because they're going to be adding somehow to the completed vision. And it also gives them a base to make a decision. The buyers in my department or the assistant decorators can make a decision if I'm not there to be asked. And I think just having lots of information is important.
It also helps when you get to be working with a visual director, and we try to go after and secure jobs that are with a director that's also the writer. So there's just one, it's not multiple people writing a script and then the director is contributing. That's the key person, and that person is conveying their ideas. So I think that was an important point to make.
I always kind of think about one of our responsibilities is helping create the visual language of the film. And so by pulling references and making mood boards, design boards, and things like that, I'm hoping the idea is that I'm also teaching my crew that language, and so that they're all speaking it fluently with each other. So if I'm not around, they can still be working within those same boundaries. You know, I'm a big, if anyone's worked with me, I always say we. I always refer to, like, if I'm talking about something or in an email, I say we, so that my department is part of the success of those ideas, and also it's their fault too if I have a bad idea. You know, and of course, yeah, giving credit, and I think that people really flourish if they know that you're giving them some agency, that they have the opportunity to make creative choices too. That's really when you bring out the best in people.
So now our raft has become virtual because we're post-COVID, and a lot of people, I don't know how it is in other countries, but in the United States, a lot of people are starting to work remotely. And so now, for example, my current team, we literally have to make them come for 3 days at work and 2 days remote. And we have some people who are strictly remote because they're young mothers and they have children. And in this, it's very different because, like you, David, I like sitting around the table. I always take lunch with the entire crew. I feel the sharing stories and even just that downtime just during lunch is kind of really fun and important, and learning about folks in the art, where they come from. It's always interesting. But how do we handle it when you have half of your team remotely? You know, it's been on my mind because I'm going through it, and on one hand, I really love it because Fridays I get everybody to work remotely, get out of the room so I can draw. This is my day to draw, and I don't have to be interrupted. And on the other hand, that communication, that immediacy, being able to stand next to someone and say, and talk about something very briefly, which cuts the time of having to explain an idea, is very different because now everything, the way we have to communicate is very different. So do you find any of that as a challenge? Are you experiencing it? That's the question.
I guess I think that the accidental human encounter in the corridor with someone from another department in your office in front of some photograph, these little accidental bump-ins often produce the best results. and what happens when you can't have those little happy accidents in the corridor with a colleague. The process becomes, for me at least, much more sterile. There are some jobs for me that I think are more easily dealt with remotely, and one of those for me has always been the graphic design, because that is essentially controlled by a computer process anyway. It goes out, it goes in, it goes out, it goes in, and you continue to make commentary along the way. But it goes faster sometimes if the two people are in the same place at the same time, pointing and shouting together about it. So I don't know what to say. I like the accidental encounters. I can handle a certain amount of the distance that needs to come from this in today's world. But there's something about, it's less of a sense of a team than it is of a sense of just getting something done that has to be done. And different people take different personal rewards from different aspects of the job. And it's a mixed bag. Some things are better done farther away, and some things can only be accomplished by the happy accident in the corridor.
I'll have to agree with Jeannine. I think that the new generation is at ease more with doing things virtually, and certainly with the COVID protocol where you have to do things virtually. But I think there's a great importance in being across the table from the key people, and then inviting costume designer and DP, because our job again is to share this organic process as you're making the movie, to share all that information with what will become a backdrop behind the actors that are talking, to share that information to camera department, to costume department, and it's way harder to do virtually. I'm coming from I'm making the same point as Jeannine. It's harder for me, and I'm less used to that. I think there's great benefits in having the key players be able to meet. One of our last movies, the director actually asked to have a desk in the art department. He didn't like the environment inside the adjoining building production office where his office was, so he actually spent time in the art department with us. And to get the benefit of that, created a great movie. And that's what we're out to do, not just get the job done.
We all want to sign up with that director. we may start suggesting to directors to move their desks in the art department. Lisa, you're the younger generation. Representing the
I think it kind of goes back to talking about communication, and I think when everything shut down, I always feel this weight of needing to communicate with my team and with the director and the DP and everybody, and so it pushed me, that stress, and I do think it was it was a dark time for a lot of reasons, but it pushed me to kind of explore, like, okay, well, how am I going to communicate if I'm not with people, because I'm used to that way of communicating. And so I started to kind of dive into Unreal Engine and rendering. I started to think about how people were doing virtual tours of spaces, and I kind of came up with a technique that kind of merged what I'll call like a real estate tour and doing a rendering where you can kind of walk around in a rendering of something I've created, and I'm able to host that on my website, and that became a great tool that now I use all the time, even though I can be with people in person. But even then, it's like I still use those more as a point of reference, and it's a good way to communicate, but I'll just take out my computer and put it on a big screen, and then we'll all be together and walk through the tour together. So I still utilize it, and it was a great tool, and and I probably never would have gone that direction if I hadn't been pulled away from everyone. But I'm thankful for that time in a way, but not thankful for all that time that I missed with people, and I think we're all probably still feeling the effects of that.
I do find that the makeup of my art department post-COVID is very different than before COVID. The way I've had to adjust my thinking and my role in this new world. And I'm still very analog. I draw by hand. It's just the way my brain thinks. I find it that the younger directors don't understand black and white sketches. So that's been a learning curve for me. And so I may have to go to Unreal Engine now after this panel. But the other thing is, like, I know that I tend to solve problems in the art department by always finding a humor in it, because at the end of the day, what we do is very frivolous. It may look very important, but in a way, it's completely frivolous. We actually don't have to exist. People really, I think a lot of producers think that. But so how do we bring everyone together?
I think, again, for a core team, I like to do something that everybody might think is silly and simple, but I try to find out when everybody's birthday is, and when a birthday falls during prep or shooting, I like to make it a big thing and actually go out and buy champagne and buy a birthday cake and have everybody, and just to be, sweet about it and positive, and have everybody stop their thing and surround a table and share birthday cake. And it's a little silly thing, but it happens usually with, 5 or 6 people on a show. And sometimes we've done shows where we both have had 2 birthdays in one show. So, but little things like that, I'll bring up about.
We don't have the time, of course, as in the art department, but directors will often show films, and that'll get the whole department, whole crew together. I think those things are important for the sharing.
Yeah. I do something that's even sillier, and there's not always time to do it, and I learned it from my decorator who used to teach grade school. And if we have time, we play a check-in game called Roses, Buds, and Thorns, where we go around and everyone has a chance to say the best thing that happened to them that day, the worst thing that happened to them that day, and then something they're looking forward to. And you could say it about anything, but it often has to do with the job. And then it ends up being a good opportunity because we'll have everybody play, including the PAs, and I learn more about my crew, or I also learn where maybe we have some weaknesses in our processes that we need to correct, or I learn that people are excited about certain sets, and that's a fun little dumb thing we do.
I keep going back to the statement of the Dada painters that life is too important to take seriously. And the work is too important to take seriously. So it's not a good plan to be in my art department if you can't laugh about things. I remember an incident where a director was chewing on me and the set decorator at the same time. And we both walked off at the end of the chewing. And there was about 5 minutes of extreme steam, volcanoes emerging from both of us. And then we just kind of shook ourselves off like dogs out of the bath and said, all right, now that we've gotten that off our chest, I guess we just have to get down and do it. So I feel like there's always a period of time where you need to let yourself and everyone else blow off the steam, regroup, and do it again. I don't know how else to get through it, because you have to blow it off, and you have to also be able to laugh about it because it's serious but not serious at the same time, and you have to be willing to just get up and go at it again.
For me, I do, every Friday I do wine and cheese for the entire art department. So the remote thing doesn't work very well for that. You can't do wine and cheese remotely. But it's an old, by the way, I was told that was an old Hollywood tradition. That is, when art departments were part of a studio, each studio had its own art department, and then that was, those were the days also of when the guys used to have 3 martini lunches, and I've always dreamt of that. I've always thought, like, wouldn't that be wonderful to just have a 3 martini lunch, take a nap, dream, come back, and you're like, I got the idea. It will solve so many problems, I think. But I just really believe in the wine and cheese and the non-alcoholic beverages. And to my absolute delight, when I was doing Lovecraft Country, there was another team on the lot. We were 2 shows on the lot, and they were into wine and cheese too. And so then we had combined wine and cheese art departments on Friday nights. It was quite epic. Really, it was world domination. We found a way. We found a way to that. So sense of humor is important. Collaboration is important. Communication is important. I find that one of the most interesting things for me is learning about other human beings and learning their stories. So, do you have favorite stories of people you've met from your art department that have stayed with you?
I'm just going to shut up because I want to hear stories from these guys.
I had a set decorator who I worked with as often as possible. And I think I worked with her as often as possible because she, like me, did not have a strict design training. In fact, I think she had a degree in biology or something. And what made our working relationship great was that we would concentrate all day long on the film, but somehow magically around 7 or 7:30 in the evening, as we were winding down and thinking about going home, we would start talking about whatever topic in biology or science thinking and philosophy that we had encountered the last week or the last few days, and we would just chew that over a little bit. And it felt really wonderful to know that there was a compatible colleague doing a job very close to my own, who also had really well-educated interests in the rest of the world, because I find that people I am most compatible with when I go to work are the people who are not just interested in the damn film business. At some point, the film business gets very boring to me. What about the real world? What about flowers or bugs? Or where can you get inspiration and not have to get it out of the film business? My best, I think, compatriots are people whose minds range wildly over whatever landscape interests them.
I'm just going to tell a cool story that happened the day, I don't know what day it is, Thursday, before I got on a plane. I was in a scout van, and a PA was driving us, which is not supposed to happen, but she was Indian, and our director, Nigerian, and our location manager, Egyptian, all women, and we were just in the van together. And the director was talking about how her parents had an arranged marriage. And then eventually our location manager mentioned that her mother had had an arranged marriage before her father. And then I mentioned my Chinese grandparents also had an arranged marriage. And then the PA spoke up and said her parents had an arranged marriage. And it was just this like mind-blowing moment. And I do think, I think the industry has come a long way, that there were just 4 women of these incredible different backgrounds sitting in that van together. But it was just like, it was such a beautiful moment, and but that came from having a conversation that didn't have anything to do with what we were filming and just us sharing our stories. But that was a special moment that happened the other day.
Beautiful.
It's odd. I don't have that many intimate stories with particular people, but I think part of it is a little bit comes from your being on the airplane. It's like being places like this and the places that filmmaking offers you to go. And I think it's always extraordinary because they're always unique, not always unique, but say exotic to your safety zone. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And then getting to know the crew, of course, that you build, who are from those locations, and you're introduced to their lifestyle, their culture, and that's always wonderful. And that's very sort of general and not a specific story, but I think that's been a really important thing for me.
I'll go outside of the movie business. Friends that also dabble in film. Early on in my career, one of the first jobs that I was given was through a mentor, architect Craig Hodgetts and Ming Feng, who just happened to be our neighbors in Los Angeles. And Craig was designing a movie for a director friend of his, a low budget thing, and he evidently had a fight with the director, and he just said to me, would I mind taking over? And I said, sure. So he's on the level of a Frank Gehry level, sketch artist, architect, an amazing person. So that ended up being one of our first movies, but we've kept in touch over the years. And Craig also was best of friends with Sid Mead, who is another brilliant sketch artist and vehicle designer that contributed to the film business a lot. But he was really an inspirational person to me, and he's really outside of the film business, but also has done movie work and the such. But not to go off on that tangent, but Sandy and I were asked by him to help on a museum exhibit that ended up at MoCA, Museum of Contemporary Art, about the Case Study House exhibit in 1989. And we then applied that to our designs for Pulp Fiction, which then became sort of this Googie style take on Los Angeles. So again, here's this influence that is coming from outside of the film business that made an impression on me. Kind of gave me one of my first jobs, but that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's an inspirational person.
We're meandering. It's okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the word mentoring, and I just really I thought about this because part of our jobs too, as a head of a department, is to actually mentor people. So let's discuss like the philosophy of mentoring and how important that is to each one of you, or not important, or.
I, of course, had a wonderful mentor, Charles Eames. He wasn't exactly getting me ready for the film business. I was basically just working very hard and watching what was going on. And after I graduated from his office, I realized that it was really important to try to pass some of this on to the people around me. And so for a while, I would say I would be happy to take women as interns or production assistants who thought that they would like to be production designers. And I'm happy to see so many women here in the audience doing this job, because for some reason, all of the women who I had attempted to mentor came to me at the end of the project and said, "We're so glad for this experience. It saved my father thousands of dollars sending me to Yale. I realize I don't want this job. Your job is too hard. You have too many hours. You have to fight too hard. You have to talk to too many idiots. So I don't want to do this." So all 3 or 4 of them ended up leaving the film business as soon as the project was over and doing other kinds of design work. One became a painter, one became a landscape designer. And I think it's really important to give people the opportunity to learn what they do not want to do.
I mean, truly, it is a gift. What a gift. I mean, to not, people to not waste their time. I mean, when I was coming up, I wasn't trained in production design, and so I knew I had a lot to learn. I'm still learning so much. I learned a lot sitting on this panel. But I would design something really small, like a short film, and then I would go PA on something bigger, and then I would go set dress on maybe an indie film, and then go PA. I actually filled in for one of your PAs for a week. I don't know if you remember, a really long time ago. And Inbal is one of my mentors. I worked for her also. Yeah, and I always try to say that to people on my team, especially the PAs coming in, like, even if I'm running around crazy and busy, you can always stop me and ask me why I'm doing what I'm doing. Or if you want to sit down and eat lunch together and ask me questions. And I always encourage people to email and stay in touch and just try to pay it forward as much as possible, because I'm really thankful that I had so many people in my life that I could learn from.
I had some brief experience with another, well, it was an art director was working with you early on before we were on Union Films, and we were working on these sort of American Playhouse literary movies that are a lot like, say, BBC. So it's based on stories, and I think I was the dresser. But there were so few people on this movie. But I eventually received the decorating title because we were doing everything. Everyone had 8 hats to wear. But the art director on that, who was wearing several hats, she told me so many great tricks. This was all starting out. And I think it was so important for me to do that as I'm speaking to my crew too. Just teach them everything you know is really important. And then also, after you've done get accomplished enough that people will invite you to speak, do it. Go to schools, teach, and always offer to follow through with students in the future. Have questions. We meet, David, you meet a lot of students.
Yeah, I make it a point to, as people contact me, I try to make it a point to meet with them, and again, face to face, and talk, that are trying to break into the film business, and then try to make suggestions for them. And I always try to say, well, maybe do you want to experience working in an art department and see if you even want to work on a movie. And I usually send people off with 1 or 2 connections that then they can follow up and meet other designer friends that I know would benefit from meeting them. So it's this constant connection thing that is important.
I want to tell you a story about a man who had a profound influence on my life. It was a cinematographer named Nestor Almendros. And even though I was trained as a theater designer, I broke into film business as a storyboard artist. only because somebody told me you draw fast, and that's how it happened. And I taught myself storyboarding from the book of the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So it was amazing when I met Ed Verreau, actually, who did the storyboards for that. But I met Nestor, and I was working as a storyboard artist, and he was the DP. It was his last film, and he was the most elegant, kind, profound person I had ever met. And when he found out that I had escaped from communist Bulgaria, and he had escaped from communist Cuba, we found a really deep connection as a journey of refugees and immigrants and trying to make sense of an American film business and having very grand ideas about being artists. And he said, come and sit with me at lunch. I want to talk to you. And I thought, oh my God, he's the busiest person. I'm not going near that. And so for 2 days, I was just too afraid to go and have lunch with him. And he finally said, why are you not sitting with me? And I sat with him. And he influenced my life in ways I never thought anybody would. I had made a documentary about Bulgaria being the only communist country after the Berlin Wall fell down to vote for the communists. We were that stubborn. And he gave me money to finish my documentary, so this is our bond. And I promised myself that if I ever become a production designer, I will do this for everyone in my department. I will sit and you'll have lunch and we'll talk about anything that interests you, or you'll run away. And I'm really proud because I've been fostering, very often have had all-female art departments, but there's quite a few of my mentees in here, and I'm really proud of that. And I'm very proud that I have some really diverse people that started as art directors since the 90s. I've been working on that. And there's things that when we're touched by people like Nestor, that you take and stay with you, and you really want to give back. And that's been a mission, and that's what I call a great art department, an art department that can come and have lunch and ask questions, and we can do a journey together in a raft or without a raft. And I think that it's time for us to take questions. Are you open to taking questions? Yeah?
Hi, I'm Merlin. I actually have 2 questions, if that is okay. So my first question is because you're talking about a very homogeneous, positive art department, which is great, obviously, but we all know it's not always great, also within the department. So my question goes on that. So how do you handle, like, if things are not going so great, people are calling in sick all the time, you put in a position you really do not figure out, like after 2 or 3 weeks, it's not really going well. How do you do that? That is one question. And the second question was, how do you integrate people with families? You mentioned you have like remote works for young families. So that would be the second question, if that is okay to ask 2 questions.
Wine and cheese is the answer.
I have one small piece of advice that isn't really answering your question. If you meet a director who tells you he has a favorite set decorator and you must work with that person, even if that person is a good decorator, don't take the job. You will be miserable because you will always feel that you have delegated something to another person who may or may not be a spy, but you'll never be able to get out from under that worry.
I really thought you were going to say you pushed them off the raft. I was waiting for that.
Along those lines, we were asked in one situation to hire the director's daughter, who had very little experience in the art department, but we were able to turn that around and have that person then be a very good way to
She became our spy.
get questions answered from the director. And,
you know, there's
and it
some
actually
directors
worked. It
that-
worked in our favor.
You know, there's some directors that once they get going, they of course want to deal with the actors or what's happening, the DP, and you'll never have their ear again. And this was wonderful because this person could go on the weekends and pop things in front of them.
So we would always just go say, you know, well, ask your dad these questions. And he would come back, she would come back with the answers. So.
On the less fun side of it, yeah. I mean, it just sucks. If you have someone on your team and there are situations happening and it doesn't work out, like any other job, any other profession, any other group of people, sometimes you do have to let people go. And it's unfortunate and it's painful all around, but it does happen.
I'm going to give you a straight answer. For a change. So on my last film in England, I was with, I'm American and I was working for the second time in England. And you're in a different culture and you're a guest. You're a guest when you are going to a different country. You're a guest there. And so I found myself giving a speech, believe it or not, for the first time. And what I told them basically is, this is how I work. You know, I just wanted to let them know how I work. And I said, look, if you ever have any problem, my door is always open. Please come to me first. Come to me first and share with me what your concerns are if you're not understanding my way of talking or my way of communication because of our language and terminology like door furniture. I can go do a whole lecture on that, of what that means. And a young woman did come to me. And we closed the door and she started crying. And I realized that she was upset because I had asked for a SketchUp, something to be turned into a SketchUp, like a flat. And she couldn't do it fast enough. And I was under tremendous time pressure. I needed to show this within 24 hours. So I asked somebody else to do it. And she was disturbed by that. And so she came to me. And we ended up having a really great talk. And I explained to her of what my pressure was, why I had to do that. That because I was in a really difficult, challenging time frame, and I had to deliver this thing, and the only way I could deliver it by giving it to somebody who could produce it in the tight time frame. And it ended up being a very positive experience for her and for me. And I really appreciated the fact that she did listen to me, that she did not disobey, and came and talked, and we were able to smooth something that could have become a very bad situation, you know. And so I think keeping your door open and telling people that they can come and talk to you is very important. That's my technique.
3 remembrances. First, about those men in suits and ties who would have the 3 martini lunch. I know and love many of them. But they also had sofas in their offices that they would go on to after that lunch. So the afternoons were never productive for them. Second is the, Jeannine, your thought of the boat is correct. Mine is a lifeboat, and I keep a manual and a sea bag on the wall in the art department, which is about how to abandon ship. So that's open reading for everyone. And finally, Jan Pascal, a decorator that I've worked with a lot, and I had a tradition on Wednesday nights of the bowling league when we were working in Thibodaux, Louisiana. So we would throw everyone into the van and go down and bowl. That worked really well in terms of team building, but it was even better when we invited the camera department down and beat the crap out of them. So it's an option.
Hi, thank you for being there. I had a question about juniors. What skills or qualities do you expect from the junior in your teams? Thank you.
I guess skills from like someone to PA to kind of do an entry level coming in. Yeah, just an openness. You know, I stopped asking people that I hire if they if they work with computers. Well, most people that age now can work with computers better than anyone on this stage. Like an openness to learn is a huge part of it. a willingness to jump in when they're being asked a task, and just an enthusiasm and kindness is the huge part. And some love for film, should be there, of course. They probably wouldn't be coming for the job otherwise, but.
Can I contribute? Is this working? I try to look for, I guess, if I'm hiring, again, the lowarchy, the production assistant, I look for somebody that's really skilled in graphics, even though it's a union position, and I'm a big believer in that's one the graphics contributions on a film is a way to do the art direction on these smaller and modest budget movies, and even on the bigger movies, I'll often have several key graphic designers, and sometimes the overflow, as long as it's within approval of the graphic designers, I'll have some very good small projects that are handled by a production assistant. I had, in New York City on one project, I had a production assistant that worked for Milton Glaser and Associates, one of the late Milton Glaser, who designed the I Love New York logo. Brilliant designer, and she was amazing. She was the production assistant. And again, it was with approval of the union structure, and some of her work was used. So a strong graphic sensibility, I think, is really important with typography and lettering.
Yeah, and the art department, I mean, we're talking about all the creativity, and it does have to have the humor and the fun, because essentially it's almost more like a military exercise, and everybody has a very specific job to do in a very short time to get a specific thing done. So it's one thing when you're entering in at a early level is you have to take that responsibility seriously, and you have to kind of watch the mentors and key off what they need, and be ready to offer all kinds of help. It doesn't even have to be in the one you're actually hired for. So.
Hi. One of the great takeaways from this is that you make it work with a sense of togetherness and communication with the art department. And that's fantastic. What happens so often now, we're working under such time deadlines, so much less prep, and overseas, and working with a lot of different cultures in one thing, where the turnaround is so fast, we don't have this time to connect and talk. And I'll work with art departments where there'll be 3 people who could speak English, and the rest of them are local. And it's great when you can work it out and you can plan things, but then they kind of go off and squirrel together, and I feel like I'm on the outside, and almost like the ship has run away from me. And I'm trying really hard not to seem imperialist when I come in, or not to be a bully when I come in, and it's more of a coping strategy of how do you keep things together when everything seems to be working against you in that situation, and you can't make those connections. But there's no real answer for this, by the way. It's like, how do you... It's more, what if you have, it's a coping mechanism.
You
and
stumped us.
Yeah, exactly.
I once had a wonderful art director who got sick of people coming to him and complaining and saying, well, but you said blah, blah, blah on this day, and now he made a wonderful graphic sign, and he put it up in our office, and it said, things change. And every time someone would come in with that pissing and moaning attitude about something not being the same as it was yesterday, he would simply stand there and point at the sign. So my whole point is, I guess, you need to be flexible. And that's hard to do, especially when you're tired. But I remember this beautiful sign in the office that said, "Things change." Very Heraclitean. You can't step into the same water twice. It's always going to be different. So it's no answer, it's just a common complaint.
Hi, my name is Brianna. I was trained in Australia, but I'm working in Sweden. And the first thing that I've noticed, being an art director, is that the production designers are in amongst the crew in the office. So their desk is right in the middle among everyone else, and they're really involved in every single conversation. But I can see that that's a bit of a strain on them and their time and their creativity. So I'm just wondering, how have you been in that kind of situation, or which way do you prefer, or what is normal for your art departments?
Is the question where our desks should be in the middle of the art department?
Yeah.
No. Absolutely not. You do not want to hear me. I play music all the time. You're all going to go mad. I need to be able to close out the world and to be able to think. So much of our work, the creative work, is also thinking and drawing. And when I draw, it's like a zen. You go into a zen thing. And literally, if you walk into my office, I would jump. I would be startled because I'm in a different plane. And I couldn't possibly do it in the middle of a chaos. To me, that's very chaotic. So I just need my privacy. Hence, I kind of enjoy the remote Friday, you know. But that's me. Maybe other people love chaos. I don't know.
Yeah, I really admire, you were talking about you like to set it up in the center and have everyone around, and I really admire that. I can't totally do it, and that is just how I operate. But my decorator, she has a lot of sayings, she has a lot of things, but something she always says is you have to put on, the metaphor is like you're flying on a plane and it's crashing. You have to put on your mask before you help others with theirs. So if, for myself, I know that I need to be able to close the door so that I can be a good designer and be a good manager for my team. So I have to give myself that, unfortunately.
I have one word: focus. Focus, focus. You have to find your own focusing mechanism and shut everything else out for however long it takes you to take the next step.
And I think it's wonderful, this gathering is so wonderful because all of us are so different. And you can feel strong in that you can do it a different way than your production or people you've had experience with. Because
there's no right or wrong way, and every designer is different, and some designers like to remain on set while shooting happens. I don't. I like to deliver a set and make sure the director is okay with everything. Maybe Sandy stays behind as things move around a little bit, but some art designers like to remain on the set the entire time, but
better use of your time.
Yeah, there's no right or wrong way.
And that's our last. Oh no, we have one more question. I was gonna end on there's no right or wrong end. No, I can't end on that.
A question about flexibility, about us having to be flexible with our designs. Since COVID, a lot of things changed. Like, I don't know, maybe we order something and now it takes 3 weeks to arrive. So the thing that you expected to have on set didn't arrive. Maybe construction materials are not as available as before. So when we propose an idea or make a design and then we don't have that, and then we have to be flexible. Because you also don't want to put your team through hell sometimes, and you have to set a boundary. How do you deal with that, having to be flexible?
I know when I break down a script initially, I'll always, there's a lot of things you'll jot down, but one is things that will take a long time to build or get. And those are the things, the minute you get the job, you start with, and find it and order it. And in the case of COVID and supplies, I don't know, maybe you have to buy 2 from different sources, or be ready to find someone to build it if it doesn't come. But I think making sure to order the difficult things first, or getting, things in the works drawn up and ready to build early, that's important.
I'm not the best manager, don't ask me. But one thing I have learned is that people are not dolls, and you can't tell them when to go to the bathroom. That's my philosophy.
Yeah, I think you talked a little bit about flexibility in the sign, the amazing sign that I'm going to put up too, that things change. I also, if sometimes a director will be overly apologetic that they have changed their mind about something, and I remind them that, like, you're a human, you're allowed to change your mind. I'm allowed to change my mind. The things not coming in time, that stuff happens, and unfortunately sometimes we're met with people that aren't flexible, that are receiving our designs, that maybe things had to change because of that. But I don't know, that's not an answer. I'm sorry. It sucks, that's my answer.
Go, Janine. I'm not sure I can speak exactly to that point, but I just want to say that there's one thing that I've really noticed in the course of my career, and I'm sure everyone here has as well, that sometimes it is better to be lucky than smart. And don't kid yourselves, luck plays a great deal in how you end up and how your career works. It's some combination of accident and being ready to accept that happy accident when it occurs and make the best out of it. But you need to be able to recognize when something is happening around you that you can take advantage of, that you can understand, and that you can swim with. And it's an intangible thing that I sometimes just call luck. You happen to be in the right place at the right time, and you performed to the best of your ability. So I think we all need to just sharpen our antennae and leave them out and open and available to know when something is passing by that you need to grab onto.
Be ready for anything. We attended a similar screening with, again, a icon production designer, Tony Walton, and it was a screening of The Boyfriend, which was a Ken Russell movie, an amazing movie that nobody has seen. But what I learned from Tony, he said it was so pressure situation with Ken Russell that every time Ken Russell would come into the room, they would ask for some outlandish thing, that he got to carrying around with him a big roll of aluminum foil that then he would be able to fashion out of aluminum foil anything, even a chair or something. So I got into bringing around with me a roll of black wrap, where all the directors, everything that we do, you're asked to do something outlandish every day that you don't anticipate, but to try to be ready for anything. And change, what Janine brought up. Things change all the time. We've worked with some directors that don't want storyboards because that locks them into something, and they don't want that limitation. Some directors need the storyboard, some directors don't.
I think this is it for us. Thank you all. Thank you.